Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir et bienvenue à notre émission Forum communautaire. L'émission qui vous promet d'être toujours à l'avant-garde de l'actualité, la politique, l'économie, l'éducation, la science, la santé, la loi et le divertissement. Forum communautaire est une émission télévisée tous les dimanches de 4h30 à 5h30 sur Cuenca Vision, WCEA, chaîne 58, Comcast 729. Notre ambition, c'est d'être vos yeux, vos pieds ainsi que vos oreilles, espérant de partager avec vous le meilleur. Pour vos publicités, questions, commentaires et suggestions, consultez-nous au 617 839 71 91 ou par courrier électronique JEAN-CLAUDE @yahoo.com. D'ores et déjà, nous vous souhaitons une bonne audition. Nous allons passer à une courte pause publicitaire.
Avant-garde. Nous devons toujours à l'avant-garde. Pour ou même qu'à l'avant-garde, consultez Jean-Claude Sanon n'importe qui est dans 617 839 71 91. Toujours à l'avant-garde avec Jean-Claude Sanon, nous offrons tout service immigration avec accident. Nous remplissons toute forme, nous mettons en forme. L'aide pour toute occasion ou circonstance, interprétation médicale légale, qu'un docteur dans l'hôpital, qu'un avocat dans le tribunal, sans compter immigration, traduction toute qualité papier, certificat, acte de naissance, de mariage, de décès.
Service de traduction, c'est même joie. L'aide pour demande de visa devant ambassade, discours, notaire public, officier d'état civil pour marier ou.
Real estate, vendre à acheter caille, mettre cérémonie pour toute occasion, c'est Jean-Claude Sanon. Non affilié à un bureau avocat en Haïti qui travaille serré à Archives nationales et tribunal. Service vite passé vent pour jugement acte de naissance tardive, acte de naissance tenant lieu, acte de décès, acte de divorce. Nous fait divorce tout sans qu'on pas besoin de payer ticket pour l'Haïti. Acte d'adoption, acte de mariage, civil ou religieux, extrait acte de naissance et de mariage, rapido presto, bon bagage sans problème devant immigration reconnu par l'État haïtien. Sans faux pas, consultez Avant-garde. Jean-Claude Sanon dans 617 839 71 91.
Nous opérons seulement sur rendez-vous dans le nouveau local, numéro 11 Rexford Street, Mattapan, Mass. We are always and will always be happy to be with you on the bridge because this is where our conversations flows. This is where we bring you what we have as far as the best people in the house. And Kevin has always been and will continue to be because he is one of the members that really concerns about this community of ours who wants to help educate and inform. And through our political analysis also, we at times bring awareness to you of what's going on in the political arena. And we learn so much from each other. So I'm hoping that you appreciate what we do here on the bridge, which is an alliance with Radio Concorde, Forum Communautaire, MCTV, Info80.net, and as well as Coming Up Mosaic. Those are all the medium that comes together to bring you this program. And we are happy to have you today joining us, and we want to welcome you. He is back. He is here. You may not see him every week, but whenever you do, he brings you the maximum possible. He has a lens of looking at the political arena in Massachusetts as well as elsewhere. So we'll stay kind of local. We'll do a little bit in terms of Washington, of what's going on today. Locally, sir, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing great.
I was just going to miss my mind.
Okay.
There's so much going on.
There is.
We have, man, I don't know how people who are going to vote this year going to start focusing on what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay? The gubernatorial race, people has come, people has gone. The lieutenant governor's race is also another part of it. We have a lot of black folks who are also running. The DA's race is one. The Senate seems to be having too many people right now running for those seats. That Sonia Diaz is leaving behind. Sonia Diaz has a very nice bump recently of about $100,000, I think she raised. But in comparison to what the coffers of Haley is, it's just like night and day. What's his name just pick up a nice endorsement, Ricardo Arroyo, the endorsement of Elizabeth Warren. So there's so much going on. Andrea Campbell is also into a race for Attorney General. So and Steve Tompkins also, who was here last week, he's also trying to keep visits for another 6 years.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in terms of the race. The most important thing I believe we should be focusing on, though, is voter registration and voter education across the black community.
Yes, sir.
From Boston, where we've created a new state senatorial district through the redistricting process.
Is that finalized? Because
It is.
As of last night, I was having a discussion with somebody who was saying that it's not a yet done deal.
It is pretty much finalized. There may be some tweaking, but the general consensus within the Senate is that this is the new district, and the governor is expected to sign this new second Suffolk district, which is in some ways a throwback to the original second Suffolk district, created in the early '70s, occupied first by Senator Bill Owens, who passed away recently. In the year 2000, the second Suffolk was split in half.
That was by what's his name?
Mr. Nick Collins sort of occupied part of it. Mm-hmm. Currently, still does, because we haven't fully converted yet. And Sonia Chang Diaz occupied the others. The work that was done by coalition of groups this past summer was to combine the black community in a more compact way within the district, so that it is highly likely that a black will be elected out of that district. So I raised that within the context of the importance of voter registration, mm-hmm. people getting registered to vote, and people educating themselves to vote. And getting in the mindset of being mobilized, getting out to vote in November. We can have all these pretty races, these spectacular, inciting races with very interesting and intriguing black candidates. That's all good. But the most important thing is really people understanding their role and getting engaged. You got to get registered first, right? And then you got to educate yourself on what those offices mean, and how you need to be processing what those candidates are saying about what they're going to do once they get elected. The Andrea Campbell example.
Shouldn't it be the works also of the Secretary of the State?
It should be.
Shouldn't it be the work also of the Elections Department? I mean, how do we? This education should not be entirely left. It should
be a school department also.
Yes,
right.
A curriculum inside of the school department.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
The civic participation has been gone. So how do we embellish this? How do we rebuild that system so that we can really get people engaged?
It's work that has sort of multiple components to it. You raise a very, very important issue in terms of what's the role of government in terms of ensuring that the citizens that it serves are informed enough and ready enough to perform at the highest capacity in terms of citizenship, and part of that is about electing people.
Right. Yeah. And
right?
I have heard such a request as far as why not turning elections day into
yes. Holiday? Why not? I support that legislation locally. It's been offered in the State House and nationally under the John Lewis Freedom the Right Vote Act, which would be federal legislation. It should be a holiday. It is a holiday in other countries across the globe, where having it as a holiday, first, it frees a person up to go out to vote, but it also sends a very strong message around how sacred the right to vote is. Yeah. That we should consecrate this day.
Right. Yeah.
Around civic
engagement.
You're not
asking people to make a sacrifice. You make it more accessible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so I agree with that 1,000%. So I don't want to take you off too much in terms of you're wanting to focus on the candidates and the campaigns, but I think nothing more important is there is nothing more important than addressing the issue of registration, education, and then mobilization around candidates that are deemed worthy to be elected.
Yeah, even the issue of same-day registrations also,
Yeah.
which came to a little bit of turmoil recently when Rob Consalvo, and with some others also, were totally against it, while the black leadership of the Black Caucus was trying to push along for it. But it's an embarrassment.
It is. It is. There's really no excuse in 2022 to suggest that it's impossible to safeguard same-day voter registration. And we should tell we should let your audience know that same-day voter registration simply means that on any given Tuesday, an election day, either in the primary in September or in the general election in November, on any given election Tuesday, Kevin Peterson can go to the poll, state that he's unregistered, perhaps because he moved into a new neighborhood 2 weeks before, but can say that I'm not registered in this district for this particular election, and the staff at that polling site can register me to vote on that day and then allow me to vote. It would eliminate the 20-day business period, 20-day business period that one requires now in terms of being registered before the election. Let me state that differently. Now, under current law, you can only be eligible to vote if you registered 20 days prior to election. Yeah, let me state it that way. So same-day voter registration would eliminate that. You go to vote on election day. We know, Jean-Claude, that in other states across the country that has this in place, Minnesota I think is one of them, voter participation increases 5 to 10%.
Wow. Okay.
It's because people don't feel, they've picked up on the fact that the election is very, very important. They may not have been thinking about it, and then on election day they says, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this policy where I can register on the first day. There is a disproportionate positive impact for people of color around same-day voter registration because they're usually under-registered, in particular communities and districts. So those people of color taking advantage of same-day registration is of even more importance to those Black and Latino and even Asian groups. Right. So it's a good thing to have. Very good tool.
Now, how do you see the gubernatorial race coming along?
Well, I was just reading the Globe just a couple days ago, and the way the Globe has framed the race is that there will be no race at all. I say that glibly, but that candidate Healy has an enormous advantage, having run statewide before, and having had developed connections and relationships with elected officials across the state. That is a foregone conclusion that she's going to be a strong nominee for governor over Sonia Chang Diaz, who has been in the Senate out of Boston for more than a decade, who has proven herself to be a strong fundraiser and proven herself to be a strong voice for progressives. I think no one would deny that. At the same time, she's facing Sonia Chang Diaz, an uphill battle. Right. By I wouldn't call Healy an insider, but she certainly has garnered an inside advantage among the political infrastructure within the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. She's more of a mainstream presence. Sonia Chang Diaz is on the outside as a progressive presence, and Sonia Chang Diaz's disadvantage, as I mentioned, is that she's never run for office across the Commonwealth before. So she has to spend much more time and money to build relationships and make her presence known outside of Boston, her Boston State Senate district.
How do you arrive with such a decision of saying that you're going to be running for certain positions when you haven't made any provisions at all to reach out such a goal?
Yeah. You're talking about Senator Chang Diaz? Yes. Well, let me Well, that's an opinionated statement to make.
Okay.
I don't know
Well,
if everybody will agree with it, but I
Okay.
think people understand your position on it. I agree that some have argued that Sonia Ching Diaz has not been present and has not energized people in her district based on her performance.
Listen, I'm talking about someone that I know, okay?
Uh,
And that I have dealt with, that I was
Senator
there.
Diaz?
Yes, that
Uh-huh.
I was there in the first campaign.
Uh-huh.
As a matter of fact, she used to be part of a program that I used to take part of, an initiative that was helping building up uh, new politicians into the city to run for public office. She was among the people that came and presented a program, I mean, a course on this, and I was there. But, and I'm very active into this community.
Sure you are.
So I can tell you who is coming around and who's not coming around, who is really playing with us and who's not playing with us. You understand what I'm saying? So when I don't see you around into almost any activities, and this is wrong on the part of most politicians, because prior to their elections, they are into the neighborhoods, they're into all the activities. But once they get into office, for some strange reasons, you hardly ever seen them active into any shape or form. So if I'm planning after I get elected that I'm going to be running for a higher office in the future, I need to get engaged, and I got to do it early enough so that people won't think that, nah, here he comes, here she comes, you know. So
No, I think you're right. I think there's some validity to the argument that some make about the lack of presence that she's had even throughout her district, at community meetings, on the advocacy stage, that she has not exhibited what's been expected. Let me put it that way. That's a deficit that she will have to sort of overcome if she's going to be successful. But it doesn't bode well for success overall if that's been your practice for 10 years while you're in office. That is why some people say that she doesn't have, Sonia Ching Diaz, much of a chance against this.
and I'll tell you though what, I would not give a full credit to Healy either. With the same impact of the arguments that I'm bringing in about Sonia, because if it wasn't for the media buzz about what she was doing, what she was accomplishing, she hasn't been around either.
Yeah. She's like,
and you know the consequences of that also, because you remember when Martha Coakley was in office, acting up as an aristocrat, should I say, did not want to come down to Dorchester or to meet with us, the blacks. So there was a price to pay. Eventually, she ran for public office, and she didn't make it. And you know the whole history on this.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, Healy has some homework and some work to be done.
Yeah. Healy does, but you mentioned other candidates. There's Andrea Campbell, who's running for Attorney General out of the. She most recently ran for mayor and was also a Boston City Council representative out of Dorchester and Mattapan. Some make similar arguments about her presence. It's being an elected official is not easy work if you're really committed to it. It requires that you be present all the time.
I tell you what, I love this famous quote that I'm not running for the office of the Lord, you are running for the office of the servant.
That's right.
And I think it just...
That's right.
It's just not dawned on them most often. Once they get into office, their egos become so high, they're jumping on that high horse, and they forgot about the grassroots thing. These were the people that really helped you to get there. High in the world once you get into office, and they're no longer your topics unless, you know.
It always, just not to beat up on Andrea Campbell, but it always amazed me around how, for example, she was not present or energized around this issue of changing the name of Faneuil Hall. You know, I'm one of her constituents. I live in her district, and we appealed to her many times around this issue of race. You know, it's symbolic, but it was really about us opening up the dialogue around race. And as an African American, she paid very little attention to it. That doesn't put her in a good stance with me as an activist. I'm not sure if I'll vote for her as Attorney General. We'll see. But my point is, and that was just an example. My point is that you got to really be committed to at least focusing on the issues that are present within your base. Those people who eventually.
Well, we are important because we're the one that elects you.
We are.
I mean, if you totally disregarding us, I don't think that you're becoming a good servant as far as I'm concerned.
I don't know if you were present. Well, one instance when Andrea Campbell was president of the city council, activists went to the city council, and she oversaw kicking those activists out as they were protesting around Faneuil Hall and turning off the lights and really being unkind. Let me put it that way. Those are the things that people remember, and people reflect on as people run for other offices.
Now, I don't know if she's going to have any competitions or not, but that's why it's only her, right?
There is another candidate out of Cambridge. I can't recall his name, but I believe there's another. She is certainly well qualified. She's an attorney and went to one of the Ivy League schools. Went to Boston Latin. It's clear that she has an intellectual capacity to be Attorney General.
But that is not sufficient.
Much more needs to come to the fore. That's right. That's exactly. She's technically qualified. her resume qualifies her, but the question is whether or not people will deem her as an engaged public servant to the extent that it is helpful for everybody.
And especially in this impactful position.
Impactful, that's right.
Yeah. Ricardo and Arroyo, as well as Haynes, what do you see out of this?
Well, Kevin Hayton?
Kevin Hayton,
yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry. Yeah.
That's an interesting race because there you have two fairly high-profile people now running for the district attorney. Kevin Hayton has an advantage, I think, because he's the interim district attorney and can be considered an incumbent to a certain degree. He's handled that well. He's been very public, Kevin Hayton, around articulating his positions around this crime or that crime, or how the DA's office is responding to the issue of justice. He's put himself in a good place. Ricardo Arroyo, however, comes from what some may call a political dynasty family. His father and his brother have been public servants and are well known.
Is that sufficient to ride on?
In some instances, it is, because some people will vote for Ricardo Arroyo because they have an affection for his father or his brother, or they think that he is the father or he is the brother. So name recognition is my point. I say it in joking a little bit, but it does have some sway in the public mind in terms of elections. We recall the Bowling family as being very prominent some decades ago. Three of them in office at the same time: a senator, a state rep, and a city councilor. That lights up the political imagination for some people, and they want to invest in that by
that nasty.
Yeah. So that's going to be a very interesting race.
But what are the advantages for Kevin himself?
Well, I think the advantage for Kevin Hayton is that he is the incumbent, as I mentioned. He's the one who's controlling the office right now, and he can control the narrative. It isn't clear whether...
And having the blessing of the governor.
Governor Baker, who appointed him. It isn't clear yet that he's a good campaigner because Kevin Hayton has never run a campaign as a candidate in his life. He's a politically attractive candidate. He presents well, is what I mean. He's articulate. He has presence. But that's somewhat different from understanding what a campaign is and implementing different multiple strategies at the same time as a candidate in terms of fundraising, in terms of messaging, in terms of appealing to different constituencies. That's a different ballgame. Mr. Ricardo may have an advantage in that regard.
Yeah, because the whole family has done that, so they certainly have a background that could help and support. But however, let's just assume that Kevin was able to hire the proper people to help him achieve that goal, and he has the money back up. It could be, a tough race.
Yeah. It certainly could be. Kevin Hayton also comes from a well-respected family. His father was a historian and an academic, and an intellectual. I think that's an advantage for Kevin Hayton, is that his roots are deep within the African American community, within the Black community. That may cause some fissures within the communities of color more broadly. If we talk about the communities of color being Black and Latino and Asian, there's a chance that that coalition may be divided between Arroyo, who's of Latino ancestry, and Hayton, who is of African American or Black ancestry. So that's something to be wary about. People, of course, have their right to choose based on ethnicities, but we want to be careful to not be so divisive that we break historic coalitions in ways that are permanent and we never get back together
and sometimes
again.
you can't mend them.
And you can't mend them, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. So we got to be wary of that.
Very, very important, because for being a minority into the state and not be able to consolidate could certainly be harmful. I know time is of the essence, but all the ladies are jumping in lately, and it's all about them. What are the chances in terms of picking up on the Senate?
On the state Senate.
On the
state Senate, yes. Nikki Aguado, she's a state rep, and then you have Representative Liz Miranda. That's going to be a highly contested race. Since we last talked, Minister Miniot Culpepper has jumped into that state.
I saw him at the Ward 18 caucus, which I'm in the vice chair of.
Yeah. So
he introduced himself well.
Yeah. So that I think this is the most important race for communities of color in the state. The state Senate race in the city of Boston, to tell you the truth. So I'm following that closely. My organization, the New Democracy Coalition, will be doing intense voter registration and education within the 2nd Suffolk District. I think as of now, there is a very strong field of candidates, if you consider those three, Liz Miranda and Nikki Aguado and Miniot Culpepper. They know the community well.
Is he a minister also?
He is a minister.
Well
He's
an attorney.
He is an attorney. He's worked with with HUD for decades in Washington, D.C. He commuted for decades, and he's the pastor of Pleasant Hill Baptist Church in Roxbury. His father and his grandfather were the pastors of that church. He has deep roots in the African American community. More so, I think, than the other two candidates who may be first or second generation arrivals into the city. Nikki Aguado, I think, is from Ohio, and I think Liz Miranda's family are from Cape Verde.
Okay.
A generation or so.
Well, also, it's going to be available too once.
That's right. There will be 2 seats available. Well, 2 seats available,
right?
Because both
for state rep,
Nikki Aguado and Liz Miranda will have to vacate their seats in order to run for Senate. So they cannot run for Senate and re-election to the State House at the same time. So there's going to be a void. There's going to be new leadership emerging in Liz Miranda's district, which is one of the most diverse districts in the state in terms of Black and Latino and Cape Verdean and Asian. It is among, if not the most diverse state rep district in the state. So there will be new leadership emerging there. In terms of Nika Delgado, that seat is mostly white. She's elected by a mostly white constituency that extends from Mission Hill, but out into Brookline, and I think up into Brighton and to Newton is a majority white district that she was elected to. That makes her very talented in some ways to be elected as a black person to a white district. That doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, right. We will wrap it up with just a little eye opener on Washington. How do you think the Biden administration is handling?
I think it's a mix.
For everything that he has on his plate.
Yeah, that's the issue. There's a lot on the plate. You know, the administration started off with grand expectations in terms of these omnibus $1 trillion bills, infrastructure bill, the social infrastructure bill. You know, it's a mixed bag in terms of his success there. We remain disappointed around the voting rights legislation that he hasn't produced as a promise.
I'm going to say that's not his priority.
Yeah, we don't.
I know for sure what's going on right now in Ukraine has become an eyesore. But however, you know, I just don't understand should I say the prejudice of the Republican Party. Not the prejudice, but I don't know, the word is missing. But anyhow, they are pushing Biden to support completely the Ukraine crisis, whereas there was a $13.6 billion for Ukraine that they were against. The hypocrisy, that is the key word that I'm looking for. I just don't get that.
Well, the Republican Party has just proven itself to be a party of contradictions and misdirection and even a misunderstanding of what it is as a party. It's all over the place. And I've said in the past that the Republican Party, the National Party, needs to reform itself. How it gets there is hard to say.
Will it be dismantled because of the whole Trumpism that's out there? Yeah. And you remember, I'm surprised that this whole Republican Party has not been fermented for one reason or the other. The Tea Party came in, did some damage. That's right. Now Trumpism came and did also some damage. For some reasons, I don't know how far it's going to go to really put itself back together.
I think the best thing that could happen for the Republican Party is for it to collapse and then remake itself all over again. Okay. I don't know how it gets to the point of collapsing because there are certain elements within the Republican Party that are just baked in, particularly the party's elected infrastructure throughout the South. That's kind of baked in. I don't know if that changes immediately. So it remains a contradiction in how it gets out of its own way. Is the narrative we should pay attention to, and it's important because the Republican Party, as it is constituted now, impacts our politics more broadly. Things just don't happen because of its own incompetency and immobility. The Biden agenda doesn't happen because we can't buy over or have Republicans buy into, 4 or 5 senators buying into the Biden agenda changes the whole political trajectory of the nation. But the party is just so locked into its own incompetency that's not happening, and that's a bad thing.
You're saying the right words, and I'm hoping that they are listening and paying attention.
They're not listening to me.
A pleasure having you today, also in the house,
I'm always
where we will discuss local politics as well as federal. Folks, it has been a pleasure being with you. Stay tuned for some more. Thank you. JEAN-CLAUDE SANON signing off.
Soleil levé, bonjour. Est-ce que nous forme? Est-ce que nous sommes dans l'air?
Non, Pam, c'est Rizvi Saint-Iné, directeur, honneur, exécutif directeur Soleil Levé. Cap invité nous dans bel programme ça nous gagnons dans la cour Randolph avec grandette nous grandette haïtien nous. Pas oublier nous sommes 100% haïtiens, n'a travaillé dans la communauté nous, n'a servi la communauté nous. Nous allons inviter ouais tout ça qu'a fait jeudi à en Soleil Levé. Tout ce qu'on va là c'est ça nous fait en Soleil Levé et c'est ça nous fait chaque jour et l'autre avec l'autre activité toujours nous mettons en dedans Soleil Levé pour grandette nous pour grandette haïtien nous. Ouais, j'ai un exercice la fête en Soleil Levé. Exercice ça sont un exercice sur le vitamine B12 et vitamine ça depuis grandette yo pas joindre yo t'a perdu exercice ça yo senti yo malade pour journée. Deuxièmement, l'autre activité nouvelle nous fait bingo, nous jouer domino, nous jouer cartes, nous fait toute l'autre activité, yo passer beans, yo passer tigandiri qui avec poids, yo fait toute qualité activité en Soleil Levé. Là fini nous servi yo snack yo et nous passer de l'eau, nous bailler au snack. Après ça, ou capable ouais dans kitchen ça cap passer et dans kitchen qu'on a là ouais manger à préparer ouais et staff yo cap préparer là, William et madame Regarde cap fait manger et madame Maison cap préparer yo fin fait manger, y a ranger, y a clean et là passer dans nursing qu'on a là ouais et nurse yo, nous gagne nurse yo et monsieur Makula, David et l'autre nurse yo, nurse Berlin, nurse Roselle qui la cap bail bon soin avec grandette nous et comparer service ça avec l'autre nous même n'a travail n'a bail bon service n'a bail bon qualité service bon bagage pour nous faire tout haïtien fier et de tête yo de yo même avec grandette nous j'en a servi grandette nous et grandette nous l'aime de ça nous pas oublier nous dans période nous là son période qui très fragile c'est période Covid-19 tout moun yo avec face shield yo gen marche nous respecter tout principe social ça demande yo tout guideline yo et alors pour nous capable assurer nous que grandette yo fait ça et vinn et programme nan Jean revenir c'est comme ça retourner c'est ça que fait nous un petit slogan dedans nous pas prend nous pas bail service transportation avec un directeur Manuel et l'autre chauffeur qui a frappé la donne même Jean ouais dans activité et directeur Henri avec un directeur Rudy Coulange qui c'est floor manager qui va monter Jimmy qui va monter adresse nous c'est 61 Pleasant Street Randolph Massachusetts 02368 nous chita là dans Randolph là ou carrelez nous tout dans 617 905 0341 ou bien dans 617 932 60 76 Soleil Levé c'est pas lycée pas mais c'est pas tout haïtien mes amis n'attendent nous venir dans Soleil Levé.